a really loud round of applause for the first ever Alexa Community Day in the world. That's a phenomenal position to be in. All of us are part of a groundbreaking, path-breaking, history-making day today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I can guarantee you that much. Not because I'm your host, because we've got a lot of interesting people who are going to be talking about a bunch of exciting stuff in the voice tech space. So we have the first ever Alexa Community Day in the world being put together by the Alexa Community Bangalore. Everyone who comes together to build and learn and create new things in the space of voice tech. All right? The user group was formed in January of 2018 and has more than 3,000 members at this point, and it is one of the biggest Alexa groups across the world. It conducts meetings at regular intervals, hosting monthly meetups and the occasional workshop on a wide variety of tools and technologies closely knit with Amazon Alexa skill building, conversational user interface design, Alexa voice services, Alexa for education, production use cases of Amazon Alexa, and much more. I have to refer to the cue card because I do not come from a tech background. I used to do something slightly different from this before I got into this line of work. And after a point, it started feeling very unethical to be profiting off of somebody else's misery. So you might be wondering what I used to do. I used to work in human resources before this. So it did not sit well after a point in time. So hence, I've switched over to this. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I usually face while doing this job is I can't do this on my own. You agree? Do you agree? Do you see the challenge that I'm facing? All right, so we're going to do a small wake word, wake gesture for the audience. What's going to happen is very simple. When I raise my left hand, you're going to snap once. Clear? Can we test it out? All right, that was fairly terrible because we'd like to do it together as a single audience. Sounds good? Sounds good? Sounds good? Sounds good? Perfect. Snap. Left hand, snap once. Excellent. Good job. There you go. Now, we're going to add one more gesture to that skill. So the next gesture we're going to add is, when I raise my right hand, you're going to clap once. Clear? So this being my right hand and this being my left. All right, together. So there's some latency going on right now. We'll fix it. Click pictures, make conversations happen, engage with each other, find people whom you can collaborate with, learn from, and tweet out and get the messages out. So when you're tweeting out, use the hashtag AlexaCMBLR and tag the Twitter handle at the rate of AlexaCMBLR. All right? So without further ado, I'd like to call upon stage our first speaker for the day. We have Jeff Blankenburg, who's an Alexa evangelist at Amazon USA. Jeff spent the early part of his career in digital advertising, building websites for Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Ford Motor Company, among others. He also spent 8 years at Microsoft, primarily as an evangelist for any new technology he could get his hands on. I was having a conversation with him in the morning, and we connected on our psychology background, and I was quite fascinated to learn that with a psych background, he went on to learn everything that he's doing right now. Today, he works with the Alexa team, helping developers make Alexa even smarter. Jeff has spoken at conferences all over the world, including London, Munich, Seattle, Tokyo, and New York, covering topics ranging from software development, technologies to soft skills techniques. He also serves as an organizer for the Star Trek conference. We consider it our privilege and fortune to have him today. Apart from all of this, he's also an avid outdoors person, possessing multiple kayaks and a Jeep Wrangler. With a loud round of applause, can we welcome on stage Jeff Blankenburg? With a really loud round of applause, can we welcome on stage Jeff Blankenburg?
Good morning, everyone. So I won't make you do all the things with the left and the right, but I'm really glad you guys are all here. I'm really glad that I'm here. I was out to dinner with a few friends last night, and I realized just how bad jet lag can be from the United States to here. At 8 o'clock, I was like, I know we're in the middle of dinner. I need to leave. I need to go to sleep. So I had a very good night's sleep. I have a lot of energy today, and I'm hoping we can have some fun as we go through this. So speaking of fun, how can I get a hold of you, or how do I reach out, or how do we connect? Here are the places, so feel free to grab a picture of that or whatever. But I'm happy to stick around and talk to anybody all afternoon about whatever you'd like to talk about. So let's get started with this. I have some really interesting things that I want to talk about today. And one of the cool things that I get to share as an evangelist for Alexa is numbers. And so I want to start just with a few interesting numbers that I think will relate to a lot of you as we go through thinking about Alexa and thinking about the opportunity and what's going on and how this is all useful to us. So the first number I like to share is there's over 100 million Alexa-enabled devices out there today. This is a lot of devices. And the exciting part of this for me, and I think all of you, I'm a software developer myself, is that's 100 million devices that my software can run on. If I want to sit down and build a custom skill, which I do all the time, these are the devices I'm targeting. This is not a small audience. This is something that I'm really, really excited about. Second one, there's over 100,000 Alexa skills at this point. So if you think about all the things that have happened so far, none of you need to build a cat fax skill. We've got it covered. It's all set. But there's lots of other cool, interesting things that are still missing. There's lots of opportunity for all of us in this room to think about what we could be building for a small business that we may know, for ourselves, for any kind of content or information that we have access to. I always say that the people that are going to have the most success in voice and in software in the future are the people that have the data. And so if you have access to a data set, find a way to voice enable it. Find a way for people to query it and interact with it and play with it. Because you'll find very quickly that other people want access to that data too. So this third one is always a little controversial. There's hundreds of thousands of Alexa developers at this point. And some of you might say, wait, there's hundreds of thousands? I don't want to compete with all of those people. To me, I kind of feel that way sometimes too. But the good news on this isn't the hundreds of thousands of people building stuff. It's the fact that because they're building stuff, they're learning, and they're innovating, and they're pushing the envelope on what's possible. And so to think about the fact that you are one of hundreds of thousands of people that are thinking deeply about what goes into voice, what goes into thinking about a good conversational experience, this is really exciting because somebody, maybe in this room, is going to invent something that just takes off. And a lot of people love and enjoy and use over and over and over again. And it's only by experimentation and innovation that we're going to be able to get to those kinds of places. All right, another exciting one is that customers have used Alexa skills billions of times. People are using these devices, and they're using the skills that are on them. Another good number I like to show is that from this time last year, there's been a 100% increase in the number of people and the number of skills that are being used. So as we think about what kind of opportunities there are out there for us, and I'm just curious because we haven't had, I'm the first speaker today, how many of you have published an Alexa skill? That's a decent number. That's probably 30% or so. So 60% of you, 70% of you, you have some work to do. All right? Okay. I'm not getting any laughs at all, but that's okay. We'll keep going. So I want to talk a little bit about devices. And not because I'm not here to say, like, hey, look at all the neat, shiny stuff. But what I want to talk about is that up until today, up until November, the devices that were available for Alexa were all something that you took and you set on a countertop or a nightstand or something like that, and you left it there, and you had to go to the device to talk to it. And that was generally the experience, something like this or the Echo Dot that's over there. But the devices that have been released recently are really changing the way that we think about how people can interact with voice. So the first one that I want to talk about is the Echo Buds. These are earbuds, headphones, that have Alexa built into them. But the cool thing about this, aside from the fact that they're good headphones, is they allow me to take Alexa wherever I go. So one of the examples that I always like to use with these devices is that I have these in when I'm on the airplane. I travel a lot for work. I'm running through an airport, and a lot of times I don't know what gate I need to go to. I have a connection someplace, and I don't know what gate my next flight is on. And so I use a service called TripIt, which allows me to aggregate all of my travel details, and I can ask Alexa what gate I need to go to. And so as I'm walking through the airport, I don't have to pull my phone out. I've got my luggage in my hand and my backpack, bottle of water, whatever else. I can just talk into the air, and Alexa's traveling with me, and I can get the information that I need. There's a few other examples of this. We also have Echo Frames, which were announced in November. And these are glasses, right? They look like any other pair of glasses you might wear, but built into them right here, I can't really highlight it, but right here is a computer interface. And so I can touch and swipe on that panel there, but I also have the ability to hear Alexa in my ears. And so as I'm wearing my glasses, I can talk to Alexa, ask questions, interact all the ways that we normally would, set timers, do whatever you'd like to do. But in doing that, I have that private, personal experience. The difference between this one and the earbuds, though, is that with this one, I can still hear the real world, right? If we think about something like an earbud, a lot of times we're kind of closing the world off, we're shutting everything else off so we can hear what's going on inside our head. With this is noise that's happening near your ears, not in your ears. And so it allows you to still hear your colleagues and do your work, but you could also have some music playing quietly or get turn-by-turn directions if you needed to walk someplace, something like that. The last one that gives me that kind of mobile feel is the Echo Loop. And this is just a ring that you wear on your finger. There's a button on the inside, which you can kind of see here at the bottom. And by tapping that button, you can talk to Alexa and do all the same kinds of things. So there's a lot of innovation happening with devices. And I'm really excited about what that leads to because it changes the paradigm from standing in your kitchen and talking to a device to being wherever you happen to be in the world and talking to a device. On top of that, we also have the Echo Auto that came out this year. And this allows you to put it into your car and, again, get turn-by-turn directions, find the nearest Starbucks, whatever it might be. And the last one, and this is just an Echo Dot. There's nothing spectacular about this, but what it tells me is that our product teams, the people that are actually building the hardware, are really thinking deeply about how people use these devices. This device never used to have a clock on the front of it. And it was only recently that they added an Echo Dot that has a clock on the front. And what this means to me is they recognized that people are using this quite often to ask for the time. And it made a lot of sense to just put a clock on the front so that I don't have to ask what the time is all the time. This was a really nice kind of minuscule innovation that makes such a big difference in users' lives. So this was something else that I was really excited about as I thought about devices. So I just wanted to give you a quick tour through some of the new things that have come out as we've thought about new devices and new form factors and certainly new modes of using Alexa. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the really new capabilities that have come out. And there's some really cool stuff in here. One that some or many of you may know about is the idea of blueprints. These are skills that you can build by just filling out a simple form. And blueprints have been around for a little while, but the thing that's really cool and innovative about blueprints is that you can now start to create your own. And so I have a realtor friend, and he has open houses, right, where he goes to sell someone's house. People come to see what the home looks like before they decide to purchase it. What he found is that he's running around the house, visiting with people and having conversations, and new people will come in to look at the home, and what they find is that they don't know what to do or where to go, and they want some simple information about the house, right? How old is it? How old are some of the appliances? When was the roof replaced? What school district is the house in? Some simple things you may want to know as you're building looking to buy a house. And so he built a simple skill using a blueprint, and some of his other realtor friends came and heard what was going on and saw this thing, and they said, "How did you do that?" And wisely, he didn't say, "Oh, just go do this thing on blueprints." He said, "Oh, I will sell you one. I could build you a blueprint skill for your houses." And so he actually has a small part of his team now that is just building these kinds of blueprints for all the houses that go on sale where I live in Ohio. It's a really interesting model because he's taking software that's pretty simple and intuitive to use, but is complicated enough for a lot of people not to want to dive into. And he's using that to turn that into something interesting that he can start generating some revenue from, right? He didn't have to write any software. All he had to do was build some skills using blueprints, and he was able to get off and running. Some of the other cool things that have been added is the idea of Alexa being able to speak slower or faster. So just by asking your device, these are things that are now possible. This happens in all of your skills in any software that you've written, but it also happens for all the first-party things as well. So if you ask her to speak faster, she speaks much faster as you want her to talk. And when you ask her to speak slowly, she slows her volume and temperature way down so that she's moving at a pace that's much more comfortable for people that want to speak slowly. On top of that, we added whisper mode. I am torn on the whisper mode. Has anybody used whisper mode? A few of you? Okay. So whisper mode is great if you're expecting it. It is horrifying if you're not expecting it. It's a little strange to have a computer whisper to you, but I found it to become very handy, especially because we have an Alexa-enabled ceiling fan in our bedroom. And I am very, very hot when I sleep. And so there's many nights where we go to sleep and I'm very comfortable, but I wake up at 1 in the morning and I'm sweating. And so it used to be I could get up and like find the dial on the wall or do whatever. Or now that I have this Alexa-enabled one, I was able to say, Alexa, I want to make sure my devices aren't on. I don't want to do anything in my house. Alexa, turn on the ceiling fan, and the ceiling fan will go up. Or I could say, Alexa, turn the ceiling fan higher or set it to 70% or whatever. But now that I can whisper, it's really nice because I can just be like, Alexa, turn up the ceiling fan. And she will whisper back, which means she's not going to wake up my wife or my children or the dog or any number of other creatures that are living in my house. So it's really nice to be able to whisper to the device. And this is a new mode that was just introduced last year. Another one is the idea of routines. If you guys do any smart home things, the idea that you can create routines with your voice. So you can just tell Alexa what you want to happen when you say a certain thing, and she will go ahead and do that thing for you. I dive heavily into the smart home world. I have a bunch of nonsense in my house related to smart home. But one of the things that I set up is I have a smart light switch in my house, in my home office. And it's not a big deal. You walk into my small office in my house, and the light switch is over here. You just tap it, and then I walk over here to my desk, and I sit down, and I get my work done. But what I found is I'm one of the laziest men on earth. And so what happens is I walk into my office, and I sit down at my desk, and I look at the light switch that's over there, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not turning the light on. It's too far away. And so the first thing was to make it a smart switch, right, to be able to tell Alexa to turn the light on for me. But now there's another device called the Echo Flex, which has a motion sensor accessory that you can build into it. And I use that motion sensor to turn the light on. So now I can just walk into my office, and the light kicks on for me automatically, and I don't have to worry about turning it on and off. It's, again, super lazy. Ask my wife. It's the laziest thing you've ever seen. But it's this kind of innovation, this kind of technology, allows me to orchestrate and really create really cool things inside my house. All right, now this one is maybe the most important thing I'm going to talk about today. And it's because it's the way that Alexa changes lives. So if you guys haven't seen this technology already, I have a short video that I'm going to show here. But the idea is, imagine being able to hold a product up in front of a device and know what it is. For most of us, all of us in the room, we already know what it is. We know this is a box of ramen. We know this is a can of soup. Well, I guess we'll watch it quietly. I can explain what's happening. But this gentleman, both of them are blind. She works in a center that helps people with blindness technology. And what he's able to do here is talk to the device and say, Alexa, show, what am I holding? And you'll see that he holds up a few products here in a moment that allows him, this is the product team that put this together. Really not sure why we don't have volume. But the idea was we identified that this was an opportunity to really help people with a technology that wouldn't have existed before. So he's holding up a box of macaroni and cheese, and it's able to identify this. And what it's actually doing is it's reading the box. It's not scanning barcodes. It's not doing any kind of image mapping or anything like that. It's really just reading what it sees on the box and reciting that back to the user. Because if you can't see, it's very hard for you to be able to identify where the barcode is or where the right side is. So a lot of times it'll even say things to you like, can you rotate the box, or can you tilt it at another angle? It'll try to do its best to be able to read the thing for you. She's going through some different cans. This is a really challenging thing for people that cannot see, is they have a can of something in their pantry, but they don't know what it is. It could be soup, it could be fruit, I have no idea. So being able to hold those things up is a big, big advantage for them, because now they can serve themselves. This guy talks about how he really likes to cook, but he can't always do all the cooking because he doesn't know what's inside the container. So what's really exciting about this is that it's enabling people to do stuff that they weren't able to do before. This was just something that isn't possible. Working with all of the food companies to put Braille on all of the packaging is probably beyond the capability. On top of that, there's also a new feature that was just released 2 weeks ago that allows Alexa to read barcodes as well. So if you're, let's say you have a jar of peanut butter, and it's empty and you've run out, you're going to throw that away, you could just ask Alexa to scan it, and she will add it to your shopping list so that you remember, like, oh yeah, we're out of peanut butter the next time you need to go to the store and buy things. So it's a really, really powerful technology and something I'm really proud to be a part of. So the other things that we kind of added as capabilities last year, I think you guys may be familiar with this language, but we added Alexa in India. We added Spanish-speaking language in the United States, and we also added Portuguese in Brazil, where I got to visit a couple of times last year. So there's a lot of innovation happening. This is all stuff that I've talked about. All of that stuff happened last year. And I'm really excited about what that means for this year because we have much, much more to do to really make this the best possible voice platform out there. So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is the stuff that I'm the most excited about, is the developer tools, the things that we can do as developers. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the idea of Alexa-hosted skills. For a lot of us, if we've built our first software, or we did this, build our first skills a few years ago, you may have found that you had to set up your own AWS account, you had to build your own Lambdas, you had to build a bunch of other things to be able to enable all of that stuff. And with something we call Alexa-hosted, this actually allows you to build a skill directly in the developer portal where you don't have to set up a Lambda, you don't have to set up S3, you don't have to set up Dynamo. All of that stuff is configured and automatically there for you. You can see there are some limitations to how much you can use, but it's a pretty high limit. And you're able to build skills without having to worry about interacting costs or anything else, right? So on top of that, we do that in both Node.js and Python. But the exciting thing for me is that I don't have to then go configure other things. I don't have to worry about getting a surprise bill at the end of the month because my software was popular. I can just go and build and do and not have to worry about those things. The next one I want to talk about is APL. Anybody built an APL skill? Fewer people. OK, so we had about 30% that had built a skill. I had 4 people that have built an APL skill. If you don't know what this is a device with a screen on it, like an Echo Show. And the idea behind APL is the ability to put visual information on a device with a screen. So we can do animations, we can do all sorts of interesting interaction models with buttons and scrolling lists. One of my favorite features of APL is something we call karaoke mode, where you can give it text to speak to the user, and it will highlight the line of text that is currently being read to the user automatically. There's a lot of nice things like that that are built right into APL. This is the design tool for APL. I'm working on a Star Wars database skill. We'll talk more about that later this afternoon in my other session. But in this is what I'm doing for the APL. So when you ask about Boba Fett, who's a character from Star Wars, you get this nice visual on the screen to show you the character and show you his name as you're going through it. So you can see there's lots of configuration and controls and things you can do to build very cool interfaces in APL. But this is kind of what the design tool looks like today. All right. The next one is the utterance profiler, and this is one of those things that I was begging the product team for a couple of years, and we finally now have some of these capabilities. I choose the character intent, so I'm actually telling it what I expect it to do. In this case, the expected slot should be character. The value that I'm expecting to get, these are all my slot values. There's Luke Skywalker, so I'm going to choose that value from my list, and then I'm going to add a couple of more. So I say, tell me about Luke Skywalker. This time I'm just going to type in Darth Vader, because that's one of my other utterances. I don't have to actually go and type all the words that go with it. That's also going to be the character intent for me. Skill connections is another very cool thing. This is the ability to plug your skill into someone else's skill. So as an example, let's say you're building a skill that's a restaurant, and they have a menu, and the user says, can you print the menu for me? Well, you could hook something up using Alexa skill connections that would allow you to then hand off the printing task to a printing skill that the user already has enabled on their account. So if they have an HP printer and they have the HP printing skill enabled, you can hand that off. It'll automatically go to their printing skill, and it'll print out the menu that you've passed to their skill for them. This is a very nice way to not have to build the entire stack of everything that you want it to do. You can also do this thing for car reservations, for restaurant reservations. There's a number of things. Printing is another one of them. But it's very, very nice to be able to hand off specific common tasks from your skill off to the one that is best suited to do that. Another cool thing that came out this past year is skill personalization. And this is another really powerful thing that we can do that allows us to think about who is speaking to our device. A lot of people call this voice fingerprinting. We call it skill personalization. But the idea is if I'm talking to my bank's skill, I want it to give me my information. I want to know my balance. Maybe I can pay some bills. But if my son walks into the kitchen and he tries to talk to my bank skill, it should say, I'm sorry, you're not authorized to make changes here, because he would have all the money if he did that. So I don't want that to happen. So in this case, I can set up skill personalization. It allows me to say, this is the only voice that's allowed to access this skill, or I could add multiple if I'd like. But this, what actually happens inside our code, inside the JSON request that we receive in our code, we get a speaker ID. And this is the thing that lets us know who's speaking. And then we can authorize each individual speaker ID to say this person's allowed, this person's not. But by default, you would just set it to say no one's allowed except the default speaker. Very, very cool, very powerful, and it's a great way to allow you to interact with users the way they expect. One great example, like a first-party example of this, is if I walk into my kitchen and I say, Alexa, play my music, she will play my music from my music library. But if my wife says the same thing, it will play her music from her music library, and those are very different collections of music. I like a lot of really good like rock and roll and classic rock and stuff like that, and she doesn't. So that's kind of the parallel here, is that we're able to really customize it to the individual user. One of the last things that I want to talk about is the concept of dynamic entities. And this is one of those things that has unlocked so many opportunities for me in building skills. But all of you that have built a skill before, you understand the idea of a slot, that you have a slot and there's a bunch of values that are in there. And it can be frustrating sometimes to be able to make sure that's updated and it reflects appropriately the data that you have in a database. And so dynamic entities allows you to dynamically update your slots at runtime so that you can say, oh no, you actually want this menu. Here's a great example. You're building, again, that restaurant skill, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. And someone says, I would like to order something. I'd like to order a meal. You can say, oh, well, our breakfast menu is available. Here it is. And you are uploading, behind the scenes, all of the breakfast items that you have available into your food slot. So now when the user says, I would like, I don't know, something salty, or I would like something with eggs, you can bring that back and say, oh, here's the things that we offer, and continue to push them through that process. But if they say they want something off of your dinner menu, it won't be in the slot anymore. You've removed it and only put the things that are appropriate for right now. So dynamic entities is a very powerful tool that allows you to dynamically modify your slots at runtime. The other cool thing that was just released a couple of weeks ago is the idea that we can now, if you're only making changes to your slots, you can go into the developer portal, you can make the changes to your slots, hit save, and you can update your production skill without having to go through certification again. There's very minor changes you can make. If you make changes to like add a new intent or add new utterances, that changes the game a little bit. You would have to go through certification. But if you're just updating slot values, something simple, that is something that you could do now without having to go through certification at all. So one of the other things that was added this year, if you're building skills for other locales, is the idea of being able to sell in-skill purchase products. And so we just added Germany, the UK, and Japan. The thing that I really wanted to talk about is a new piece of software called Skillflow Builder. And if you haven't seen this before, it looks like this. And you can come in and you can build flows, build conversation flows around what it is you want to talk about, what conversation experience you want your user to have. And you can also define things like, what should Alexa say when we get to this certain point? Or what should the reprompt be? Or in this case, we know they're going to say yes or no. So if they say yes, let's go to the node that is for yes. And if they say no, let's go to the node for no. And you can really dig deep into this. You can see as I continue through this tree structure, I can have very elaborate things the Alexa can say, what the reprompt is, what I want to show on the screen, variables that I may need to store as I'm collecting information from my user. But all of these things, all the stuff that I've covered, whether we're talking about cool tools like Skillflow Builder, or we're talking about some of the new developer capabilities like dynamic entities, there's a lot of cool opportunity here for you to build some cool, innovative things. I'm interested to know this from all of you as we walk around today and get to meet each other, is what are you planning on building this year? What is the cool new thing that you have an idea for? I'll share one of mine, something that I'm very excited about. I'm working on a very big trivia game, something that has thousands and thousands of questions, 20 categories, and ideally, you win real money for having played it. So I'm working on some mechanisms to figure out how exactly to do that, how to generate the funds, how to do those things. But this is one of those projects that I've been working on for probably 8 to 10 months at this point, and I'm really excited about where this thing is going to land. I spend a lot of my time thinking about exactly this. How do I get this thing out in 2020? How do I get people to use this? And I hope that you all have something that you're dreaming about too. So with that, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was phenomenal. I have picked up a bunch of ideas for my Christmas shopping.
Perfect.
And I've seen a couple of features my mom's going to be really excited about. Right? So can you have a really loud round of applause for Jeff?